I literally am at my best when I don't know what's coming. Is that a
Just
sneeze or a cough?
I just swallowed a bug.
Am
Okay.
I am I going to have to call 911?
Yeah, you know what? Thank
All
God
right.
we got doctor in the house.
There you go.
Oh, we're losing my power. Aren't you glad you joined me tonight?
Of course I am.
This is why I don't do lives.
Built something that I feel I can be proud of, but at the same time, it's all about serving others. And like you, I envision myself as a healer.
Welcome back to the channel. I am here with JD Gershbein. He is the founder and CEO of Owlish Communications. He is one of the world's first independent contractors for LinkedIn. And I can't tell his story as well as he can. So, JD, please take it away.
Well, you did a fine job, Jillian. And is this where I say thanks for having me?
This is, you can. You're so welcome. This is where the applause comes.
You are absolutely correct. You couldn't be more right. In 2006, I hung out my shingle as an independent LinkedIn consultant, one of the first in the world, and there were only a handful of us, and we all knew who each other was. And really, from the moment I saw LinkedIn, I was smitten, and I wanted in. I thought this was going to be great, and I had switched over from a traditional marketing practice to a consultancy exclusively focused on LinkedIn. And what do you know? The phone wasn't ringing. There was nobody retaining me for the work that I would eventually come to do today. And a lot had to happen and fall into place for me to have a career. And fortunately, it did.
So I hear a lot of amazing things that you've helped people with coming into LinkedIn and really finding it to have evolved tremendously since I signed up for LinkedIn years ago, where I think it was, I barely kept it up to date. And now it's all of a sudden become this huge networking community where most of the individuals in my network have become true friends of mine. Is that what you've been experiencing?
Well, first of all, it has given me an identity in the business universe, which is something I feel I didn't really have prior to my discovery of the site. And that didn't come easy. That took work. It was a slow, incremental build. And again, pushing the envelope early on. I had a marketing background. I had a literary background. I knew what I was doing. I didn't uh, really feel like I was at a crossroads or a stalemate with LinkedIn. I knew what to do. I was very intuitive with social media. I filled out all the sections of my profile, each compartment of information, really a vertical cascade of what I felt was the best content on me at the time. And I used LinkedIn to get clients for my marketing business. Now, again, let me take you back into that time machine. This is right at the headwaters of the Great Recession. So I was going to events, networking events with people who were out of work, executives who were eliminated from their positions, who needed new jobs. And obviously, LinkedIn back in the day was truly branded as a job seeker platform. So it was getting the lion's share of the employment searches, along with Monster.com and CareerBuilder.com. LinkedIn was kind of starting to make this push as really that kind of platform because it involved the building of a network. And unlike some of the other sites where you just click over a resume and hope to hell someone calls you, this was different because now you're seeing people, you're reading about people, you're learning about them, and ideally, you're investigating them a little further than just what they offer on a social networking site. So again, in the early days of social media, where we're trying to reconcile our value as professionals and figure out how we represent on a singular page in a profile, I kind of took the reins on that, and I put myself out there in a way where I was serious about what I was doing, and I wanted people to take me seriously on this page, and scratch and claw and built something that I feel I can be proud of, but at the same time, it's all about serving others. And like you, I envision myself as a healer, and I know the pain points of my clients when they approach me. And for whatever reason, they cannot extract value out of a site that kind of comes naturally to me. So that's the path I'm on. And I'm fortunate to be on the journey with so many cool folks.
And I will say that certainly what stood out is your empathy and your level of deep connection and authenticity. And I know from listening to you on your TEDx talk that authenticity really is something that you make sure people know is so important in their own marketing.
Hmm.
Also, what I was hearing and translating to what's happening now with a lot of people leaving the job market and they're hanging their own shingles, they're looking for something. They're
Yeah.
looking, and it's that something they're not quite sure, but LinkedIn has all of those networking things that you're talking about. So if we focus in on to the medical professionals, I would love for you to share your origin story and how those people really connect with you.
Wow. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
How much time you got?
You know, I have, who only knows if we're going to get in
True.
state of mortality, and but
There you go. It could go well beyond the allotted time for something like this. But I will tell you that I grew up in the healthcare field, and I've been speaking with doctors since I was a kid. My father was a dedicated man of medicine, a clinical researcher. He founded and expanded on laboratory science in Chicago, working for, at the time, Northwest Hospital, which was on the corner of Central and Addison, for those Chicagoans who are listening. It was eventually bought out by Resurrection. Yes, I know, Jillian. You are an honorary Chicagoan. You have the keys to the city.
thank you.
And so I grew up coming into his laboratory and watching him do his experiments and actually helping him do his experiments. He was a liver man, and you get to be known in research circles by the organ you focus on. And he studied liver regeneration, and a great deal of what he uh, had discovered has stayed within the medical literature, and he now owns pages and pages of Google posthumously. He died in 1994 before the advent of the internet. So I was on this path to becoming a doctor. Wow, imagine that. I was assisting on autopsies when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
I was working in the ER, the OR. I was, back in the day, I was transporting specimens to the laboratory. Uh, I was drawing blood. I was an ASCP clinical chemist. I was running blood counts and chemistry panels and doing all of the clinical work. And then I would also help my father on the research side. So I was groomed, man. I was uh, any kid that really wanted medicine as badly as I thought I did back then would have craved this opportunity, because I was on the front lines. I had patient contact. Going up and listening to some of their stories, and bending an empathetic ear to what was going on, and working with nurses and technicians and doctors. And I just got this sense that, okay, this is home. This is where I want to be. This is where I should be dedicating my life. But, comma, it was a rough road. And academically, I didn't have what it took to get into medical school my first time or my second time, but I persevered and got in on my third try. And my father was there, kind of humming beneath the surface, always motivating me, really never giving me any inclination other than medicine is where I needed to be. Joel, back in the day, he didn't call me JD, just so you know. So fast forward to present day, I got into medical school on my third try at the Chicago Medical School, and pulled out and quit a month shy of completing my freshman year. I just felt that I wasn't there for the right reasons. I was taking someone else's place. It wasn't for me. It was Dad's plan and not mine. It was what he wanted for me. And it took a lot of courage to do what I did. I remember that day. It was a blisteringly sunshiny day. And I walked into the dean's office and I sat down, and I mean, he could just kind of see it on my face. I had a pretty good relationship with him back then anyway. And he said, "What's up?" And I said, "Well, okay, here you go." And 20 minutes later, I kind of walked slowly out of his office and knew I had to make the drive home and tell my folks. And let's just say that Dad was not pleased, to say the least. But it was a big inflection point, not just in my career, but in my life trajectory. Because from that point on, I felt more independent than I ever had before. The autonomy was there, and I could expand my horizons. And truthfully make up for lost time. So long story shorter, things were never the same with Dad and I after that. But you know what? It's cool because in the long run, it instilled in me a love of science, which I have always had, a love of art, which I have always had. And now I combine the two. I'm very artistic and performative in what I do. Again, I bring the sensitivity of a healer to what I do. I meet people where they live. I don't try to sell them anything. I really try to get to know them. And if I'm going to work with them and go down this path of creating narratives and stories for them, I better have a good one to report back to them, but I better know what I'm doing. So, always been creative. I've always had these outlets in art and music, and I've just combined everything. And when LinkedIn came along, Jillian, it was like the right thing in the right place at the right time. I was completely and perfectly hardwired for it. It was everything I had ever trained for, and everything up until that point was an audition.
Mm.
And in the words of John Lennon, I think we've lost the audition.
Wow. How much of this resonates with all the viewers that and all the guests that have been on here is that part of when we discover where we're at is no longer where we want to be. And how did you find the courage to go and say, this isn't the right path for me? I'm going to pivot.
It was overwhelming, to be honest with you, Jillian. I just never really settled into the rhythm of medical school. I wouldn't say I had a problem sitting still and looking at textbooks, but a lot of it wasn't registering for me. I was reading the words, I was putting things together, but I guess through it all, when it came to the academic piece of medicine and learning how to be a doctor on the clinical side, I just couldn't put it together. I had every other tool. I was certainly sociable. I could relate to people. I could put things together. I knew the organs of the body. I knew the systems of the body. I passed the anatomy practical with flying colors. But at the same time, it just wasn't fun. It was emotionally draining. I didn't feel I could keep up. I had imposter syndrome behavior starting to seep through. I just felt I didn't belong here, and that I would be discovered for whatever, that I couldn't pace with these people. And I started to distract myself, and my studies suffered. So really, by the time I got to that chair in the dean's office, it was a fait accompli. All I had to do was say the words, "I can't do it. I'm out."
And knowing you, I know the deep empathy, something I really related to that was a struggle for me is appreciating when you are so empathic and how challenging the healthcare system is and the perfectionistic tendencies and always wondering, am I good enough?
Perfectionism syndrome. Well, we kind
Yeah.
of joked about it before we rolled tape. I think it's a bona fide syndrome, and I wrestle with it. I wrestle with it in my business, and on one end, I believe my clients appreciate the fact that I approach perfection as best I can, but at the same time, it can delay and it can procrastinate something, and uh, I I've adopted more of a ready, fire, aim approach through my business practice now. I'm a little bit more accepting of mistakes, and actually improvise my way through them a lot better than I used to. But I've also emerged with a sense of knowing what the right reasons are to pursue a medical career. And one reason I'm so jazzed to be with you and how we've kind of formed this friendship so quickly is because the burnout rate for physicians, I identify with it. I feel it. I feel them. I know what they're experiencing from someone who maybe got out before I would have experienced something like that. I knew I would have never made it. There's no question. I would have left. I would have. I'm glad I did it back then at that time instead of waiting till say my second or third year in residency. So for me, when now I'm meeting a lot of physicians,
Yep.
meeting a lot of physicians who are confessing burnout, and I'm a receptive ear for that. And they want to become entrepreneurs, and they want to follow and shepherd their passion projects. And guest on podcasts and write books and produce media. So I'm right there for them. I'm right there to pick up the slack and give them what they need to move forward on LinkedIn.
And you're so uniquely positioned because we do get, for one, I will expose the fact that your name has come up in such positive ways as, oh yeah, JD helped me with this and that. So empathic and so helpful and so considerate. And then your unique position from knowing, from walking a similar path and then being there.
Well,
Mhm.
and what have we seen since the onset of the pandemic? As we sit here and roll camera, we are 2.5 years into a global pandemic that has just completely derailed the world, and nothing is the same, and may never be the same again, certainly in the healthcare profession. And we've all been given this incredible bubble of time to reevaluate and reprogram ourselves. How have we spent this time? Have we been constructive or destructive in figuring out who we are, where we are, and what's next? I did a lot of introspection, deep introspection during the pandemic, and knew where my place was. So my pivots weren't as intense as others. I micro pivoted.
Mm.
I have always kept my feet firmly in what I'm doing, but I also venture out creatively. I try things. I do things. I run live events. I do television shows. I do unique audio events. Anything I can do to educate people in a unique, sophisticated, yet quirky
Mhm.
way.
Yes. And I love that too. So before my interview meetings with people, I like to get to know them. So that's what I found. I'm like, JD is everywhere. And and getting to know you is so nice. I get to know you through your writing, which will make sure to share that origin story that you wrote that had me, I was filled my heart so much with you sharing the background with you and your father and the expectations and kind of that journey. And then
Mm-hmm.
we've got you on TEDx, and I'm like, wow. And then we've got JD's over here and JD's over here, and then hearing just your independent support for people, which is behind the scenes, but I just have to at least provide that acknowledgement of it. Because I'm like, what the heck doesn't he do? And when I was trying to say, like, in the beginning, how do I introduce you? You do everything. But in that context, I would,
Well, I can't juggle, Jillian. I cannot juggle.
I can't either. I can't either.
Yeah.
But I do want to bring this back to owlish communications. And
Okay.
because I have sea turtles on my website, and I'm like, well, is this very professional? I mean, for me, it is because it's deeply meaningful. And the coach I work with is also a shamanic healer, a shamanic mentor. And I'm like, well, that's the person I want to come to me, someone that is open to
Mm-hmm.
healing at a deep level. And I think to your point of creativity, I think when we were in medicine, and I in medical school was trying to take acting classes because I used to act on stage for small plays. And I was like, my creativity is gone. And I think part of the healing process has been this YouTube doing Canva. I'm like, just being creative again. And so when I heard your TEDx talk about the owl, I really wanted to know, can you share with us why the owl?
Sure. And that was the first time I had ever expressed that story. That was April 2015. I had a chance to go back to my alma mater and not only be a speaker at on the TEDx Red Dot, but also work with the students. It was a student-run operation.
Wow.
That I got a couple of master's degrees out of that institution, so I figured, okay, they brought the kid back, and maybe I can impart something to the future leaders. And we put on a great program, a legitimate TEDx program prior to the pandemic, and had a great turnout. And that was interesting for me because I'm so improvisational. I'm highly extemporaneous on stage, and I had to do more memorization. I had to really go out there. It was like almost like a one-man show to go
Yeah.
out there and deliver an 18-minute story. But embedded into that talk is my founding story of Owlish Communications, which really takes me back to my intro to the owl. And that was my sister Marcia, who is 14 months younger than I am. We were going through junior high school together, what kids today call middle school. And she was in ceramics, and she was making a whole lot of owls. And she entered an owl in an art fair. And it was a very crude asymmetric owl. I show it on the TEDx slide deck.
I'll
It's
make sure to link that TEDx.
there you go. We can show people that. I don't have it with me. It's actually behind that closed door, which is my student.
Just have to speak loudly for.
Yes, I keep it. I've insured it with Lloyd's of London to make sure that nobody takes it. But she entered the sculpture into the art fair, and she did not win, place, or show. And we have a very famous family photo of her being extremely pissed off with my mom. And she got home and she was mad, furious, and she wanted to throw the thing away. And I literally rescued it from the garbage can, and that really kind of begat my love of owls. And from there, within the next few months, I was doing a science project, and I could pick any topic I wanted to write about, as long as it had to do with science. And I chose the owl.
Wow.
The owl was my choice, and I learned about him. And before too long, I started collecting owl figurines, and people knew this. They started giving me owl figurines as gifts. And I had this whole shelf full of little owl statues and a little parliament of owls. By the way, I don't know if many people know this, but a group of owls is called a parliament of owls. So I had this right on my top bookshelf, all looking down on me, and gave me a very nice feeling in my bedroom, my inner sanctum. So the owl is a sacred creature. And when it came time to name my company, I called back on the owl. And I liked the sound of owlish and communications. I like that cacophony. It just kind of flowed off my tongue. Yeah. And initially, my first company was Owlish Productions.
Okay.
I mutated it over to communications, and now I've relaunched Owlish Productions to handle my media. So wow. The owl is, as you might say, quite pivotal to me.
It's a beautiful story. I used to collect cows, and I'll share with you just to relate. I usually relate to people. I don't like to take up too much space with my story, but a funny thing is I draw a cartoon cow, and that's how it all started. Was I drew the cow, and I was really excited, and now people will teach their children how to draw the cow that we drew in elementary school. And so it brings such a meaning. And during my 6th grade science project, we got to study anything we want. So I studied the cow. But now most people will know I'm obsessed with my dog, and who is Reese, and the sea turtles. But it was when I saw that and I heard the story, it's so special.
Okay, so do you know what the top animal collectible category is?
Cows.
No.
Oh.
I'm not sure they cracked the top 10. Oh, you can guess. Come on. You probably had several when you were a little girl. I'll give you a hint. First word is teddy.
Teddy bear.
Bears are the top collectible item out there right now. Owls, I believe, are quite high. There is an international owl society of which I'm a member. I'm not even sure they convene meetings at this point. It's just a bunch of people who just dig owls. I mean, it's about all that it is.
Yeah. I love this. So, okay, so the people that should come to you are people that dig owls and who else?
Well, for Owlish Communication, how do I help people? I help people by letting them help themselves, truly, because there's a misnomer in the professional development industry that we are the gurus and the Sherpas and the experts. And believe me, I have never self-declared as any of those terms. I can't stand those terms. If people want to refer to me as them, I'm not quite sure how to take it sometime, because if I told you, Jillian, I'm an expert in something, it would imply that I'm done learning. And I'm a lifelong learner. So LinkedIn shows me something new every day. I'm someone who has spent about 100,000 hours on the site, and I know my way around it. I know what I'm doing, and I'm qualified to teach it. So truly, I'm a couple of different things to folks, but more than anything else, I'm a thought partner. I help them through the barriers that keep them from achieving on LinkedIn or in business and using the site effectively. And one of those problems, in fact, almost to a person, is the inability to acculturate into the online world. I take this for granted. You may take it for granted. Anybody that's good with a mouse and understands how to navigate websites takes it for granted. But until you've sat next to a technophobe or someone that just doesn't get it, it's very difficult to imagine that, and it does cause pain. People don't feel competitive if they can't master even basic skills. So my work with people on one end is navigational, it's basic, it's tutorial, but then we proceed to the real urgency, and that is helping them create their story, flesh out their narrative, curate the best of the best for presentation on a singular internet page that can mean the difference between them getting work or getting glossed over.
I think that's so important too. It's not only your marketing as if you're going out to be an entrepreneur, but finding the right company. Because we talked when we first met, it was like how you put what we convey on LinkedIn and the importance of conveying in a message that's authentic and appropriate for the space. And I'm vulnerable, right? It's on my messaging. And I was like, always question the level of vulnerability. Of course, I want to come in with professional level of vulnerability, and also recognizing that if a place that I want to work at doesn't appreciate what I provide in terms of vulnerability that I feel can help other people, and that's probably not the best company for me. So I appreciate that opportunity that you're really helping people to showcase who they are, who their unique gifts and talents are, because we know you could have made it through medical school, but your unique gifts and talents could better serve without extraordinary detriment to you in this space. So you've learned from your journey, and it seems to me, I'm like, you're very much, you are a healer.
I self-classify these days as a personal brand strategist.
Yes.
And personal branding is a very nebulous term for a lot of folks. And what is personal branding? I'm not responsible for people's personal branding. Only you can build your brand. I'm just the architect of a brand infrastructure that gives people impetus to move forward on the site and attract people to that point of reference in the business universe where they can learn about each other. So for me, the challenge is making people feel comfortable with the presentation they're going out there with on LinkedIn, and then doing what they need to do to lay down memory. When you talk about personal branding, it's a neural concept that really occurs at the highest intellectual and emotional levels of the brain. We buy products because we have some emotional connection to that product or service, and it stimulates our intellect in many ways. And we retain a sense of loyalty because the product serves our needs and we keep coming back.
Yeah.
And the misnomer, I use that word, I think that's the third time I've used it in this interview.
Okay.
I really do like it.
Redundant.
I really love that word, misnomer. In fact, if I ever wrote a novel, misnomer would be a title character in it. But people keep.
Let me pause for a laugh here.
These are the jokes, folks. So, but again, people put themselves out there in a way where they want to be remembered and retrieved and recalled, and working into short-term and then into long-term memory. So advancing this applied neuroscience. The work that I do for my clients isn't just about taking their stuff and here's a profile draft, have a nice life. Yes. It's about leveraging the platform, the medium, helping them capitalize on that profile, not just letting it sit out there in cyberspace hoping to be found, but really being proactive and going out there with content, with communications, with correspondence, and saying, hey, LinkedIn platform, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's who I do it for, here's why I do it, and here's why I'm the logical choice to do it for you.
And that is such a hurdle for a lot of us to sell and own our value. That's something with the physician entrepreneur group, and why I love, I feel like you're a natural coach, right? You're coaching, you're helping the person to learn and make their choices from within. And I think also when you have that early realization that we're following someone else's path, I feel like your brain always kind of, maybe this is a natural part of who you are, so tell me where it came in, but your experience, I can only imagine, translates to making sure that that person's going where they truly want to go. Do you relate to that?
I do relate to that. And it goes back to even growing up, where I had a lot of autonomy and I was free to explore my passions. And even though I was on kind of a one-track path to go to medical school, I was still given complete freedom. And I developed a range of interests and activities that I could indulge. And from playing sports to playing the piano to photography to art to cartooning I
Cartooning,
mean,
you
cartooning, believe
I
it or
would
not.
have to see your cow. That's what got me into
I
drawing.
can do a cow. I can
Yeah.
do a cow.
All right.
Absolutely. So and my mother was an artist. So I had that working for me too. I inherited this incredible artistic scientific balance, and the two have always been in harmony. And I use art constantly in my work. I use metaphor and trope to explain concepts to people, very complex concepts to people, and it works. It works for me. And when I go on stage, I discovered the joy of performing in high school and being on the radio uh, for 4 years at my high school, and then 4 years into college. I've been a broadcaster since I was a teenager, so I've always been able to kind of get the point across.
Mm-hmm.
It comes naturally for me, and improvising every step of the way. I literally am at my best when I don't know what's coming. For me, I'm always learning as I go and course correcting along the way. I think that being a course corrector is important, and my gosh, especially in medicine, I consider myself a better than average diagnostician. And if I snuff out a problem or anticipate a problem, I'm ready for it. I expect it to happen. When I speak, I know what questions my audience is going to ask me.
Yeah, I'm only
And
laughing because of what just happened, the irony. So anyone is I cut the part out where I choke on bug, let go so, and then we're talking about how you go with the flow. So the irony of this discussion proving a point is
well, there you go. And stuff happens all the time in speaking. If you're going out there and speaking, and I've had every obstacle thrown at me, every uncomfortable situation when the technology fails. I almost feel like, just going up there and doing shadow puppets with my hands
well,
and
that's what
saying,
I was thinking as the
yeah,
like it's
that's,
stormy out and like eventually my
yes.
screen's just gonna turn black.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, and that's just a question of being human. I think people want to see you being human too.
Yeah.
And that's part of that letting go of the perfectionist syndrome to a certain point. I'm always trying to produce as polished an output as possible, whether it's video, whether it's spoken word, whether it's writing. I agonize over the placement of every word on my clients' LinkedIn profile drafts, and as they would hope and expect.
I feel like we're both goofy, but serious. We're very serious. And tell me if you relate, but my goofiness is because I'm so serious. I like have to let it out somehow. Like I gotta laugh.
Oh, for gosh sakes, I encourage letting out goofiness.
Yeah.
Goofiness contained is unhealthy. It really is. I mean, look, play is huge in the business world right now. Improv is a huge piece of that. Second City has infiltrated all areas of business and does workshops for employees with low morale. I mean, being being indifferent and being cold and being toxic is just not the way to go. I mean, everything's much more fun when you let loose.
I love that. And it's a great time to say, where can people find you?
They can find me pretty much anywhere. I'm ubiquitous.
I would have to agree with that. And if they wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best place to
The
find
best place to get in touch with someone who has made LinkedIn their livelihood? Huh, that's a good question.
you? Oh,
Oh, wait a minute. It shouldn't surprise anyone that I do maintain a LinkedIn account, and I am searchable on LinkedIn under my initials, JD, no period, and then the spelling of my last name, which I'm sure you'll provide.
I will provide that. And I also was delighted to hear that you're also constantly learning about LinkedIn because all of a sudden they have LinkedIn learning. And I'm like, this is really valuable and all the networking happening. And so to hear someone that is intimately working with LinkedIn to say, yeah, I'm learning a lot all the time, I share that sentiment.
Yeah, I'm always picking up new things. I go in with that mindset. I'm a huge believer in mindset, which is important in not just in business, but in life, to have the right attitude and outward energy and cognitive steam behind what you're doing. And I don't ever look at this as drudgery. I see magnificence in it. I see people who are trying trying to achieve something, and there's a lot of support seeking behavior, a lot of validation behavior. a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of people sharing their struggles. It's as if they're using LinkedIn as their personal confessional and telling about all of the problems they're experiencing and all of the health issues they're facing. It is a place to surmount challenge, but it's also a place to assert yourself as a leader. And I'm not sure we want our leaders to convey all that vulnerability. It's okay to talk about a chink or two in the armor, but uh, letting a whole community know you're beaten down and worn down, it's probably not the best thing for a social networking site dedicated to business, where you're trying to build a career, advance a career, grow a business.
And
You want to be looked at as strong. You got to go out there bolstered and energized and fortified.
I think that definition of strong is challenged, right? Because I think my greatest strength have come from vulnerability, but shared in a way that's meant to provide people, it's not just to vent, it's to say you are not alone, and also to provide the resources that have been so helpful. And so I think that's why it's important to have someone like you to walk with these individuals who want to share their story, but make sure it's authentic and in a way that will be received appropriately on the right forum. And I will use Instagram for an example. That is the forum where I do not consider how, I mean, I always consider people are going to find it, but it's the outlet of my personal outlet, right? And so I always think that we always have to question what strong means, and sometimes asking for help is the strength, and how can we convey the message that's appropriate and
yeah,
placed on the right platform.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pain out there, and people are dealing with more grief and anxiety and stress and loss and uncertainty, and our lives are really not quite what they were pre-pandemic. And if you've lost someone, if you've experienced the downsizing of your job, and if you are having trouble getting a consultancy going, or in the medical world there's burnout galore, people are questioning and they're reevaluating and they're trying to reposition themselves in the world. And LinkedIn just happens to be that platform. It's king of the heap in social media. If you're going to turn around your career and really kind of get back on the saddle, that's the place to do it. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be in conversations with doctors like yourself, because I am receptive to it. I understand. I have not walked in their shoes. I've never treated patients, but I know what it took for them to get there and do it. And if they're experiencing that kind of burnout or stress, or some just want to walk away from the profession and start anew, that's where I can serve them and tell their story.
Amazing. And I know you've shared so much valuable insights and wisdom. I don't even know if
have I, or are you just saying that because I'm in front of you here?
I'm from Chicago, as you know, so
I do know.
We're blunt. And
that's right. We have Midwestern sensibilities, Jillian.
Yes,
so we're honest, integral people, right?
Yes, you can trust what I would say.
Okay.
And also, I just wanted to invite you, are there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with the audience today?
Gosh, I know your audience is very eclectic, and I know you are very high profile in your community. And
I don't know about that, but
and you have shared your story with me, and it's a compelling one. And I think that storytelling is the new marketing. Let's face it. And these days, your message is intertwined with your story. What got you to the dance? And what got you to the dance won't necessarily keep you at the dance. So the thing to take from a conversation like ours is, no matter what walk of business or life you're in, obviously it's dynamic. It may not be the same 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, a decade down the road. And we have to future-proof ourselves as much as possible. And in the business world, we can do that on LinkedIn. We can surround ourselves with people who care about us, who are compassionate, who will listen to us, who will introduce us to their colleagues. And that's really what makes the world go round, for lack of a better term.
It's beautiful. It's the shared mission of this YouTube channel, right? It's building that community, that network,
Yes.
that support as people lean into the unknowns, not to say they should subscribe to my YouTube channel, but they should subscribe to the YouTube channel as well.
I have a quote out there, and it's something that I've done as a meme on LinkedIn. We are all in the business of helping each other get unstuck.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, JD, for being here.
You're welcome.
And I know people will have so many questions for you and want to connect, so they can comment down below. And also, of course, make sure to connect with JD on LinkedIn. And we appreciate everyone for being here. And until next time, thanks for watching.
Bye, Jillian. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome, JD. Thank you for coming.